So a recent survey suggested around 612,000 Singapore dollars as the point where people consider themselves to be financially independent. Today, we're going to be exploring the question of how true this actually is, what you can do if you actually had that amount, and more importantly, how long it will take the average person to reach such numbers. What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be answering the perennial question of how much do you need for financial independence in Singapore, as well as perhaps neighboring countries that you might see as alternatives, and more importantly, looking at how long it is likely going to take you and what you need to do to actually reach such numbers. So the figure that has been quoted by this study in Singapore is actually slightly over 600,000 Singapore dollars. Now, this is of course in cash. I'm going to be assuming that this excludes things like a house. Nonetheless, let's have a look at what you can actually do with it and how accurate this is. Now, pulling up our net worth planner, which you can get once again in the link down below if you're serious about tracking your net worth, you can see that at around $600,000, you're probably getting back around 1,600 to 1,900 per month. Now, that is definitely not going to seem like a lot if you're going to be living in a high cost of living location like Singapore, but that does actually open up opportunities for you to move to lower cost of living places. So for example, people could go to places like JB, they could go to places like KL, they could go to places like Bangkok. Chances are this is going to be able to cover your rent and then some. You might need to go baristify if you are still, looking to get some extra quality of living, but that could be considered much less stressful than a full-time role back here in Singapore. So if you're single and you have no other reason to stay in Singapore after a certain age, perhaps your parents also decided to retire somewhere else, then this could actually make sense for you. But looking at the numbers, it does seem a bit low. Now, if you were to double that amount, well, that would seem somewhat more realistic if you were to choose to continue living in Singapore. Now, if you had a house fully paid off already, and that 600k is just on top of that, then yeah, maybe this would make a bit of sense. $60 per day, you're basically eating out 2 meals every day, and you would somehow be able to live within that amount. So there you have your answer over here, assuming you're able to get 4% on your saving. Now let's move on to the second part of the video, where we'll be talking a bit more about what you actually need to do in order to arrive at this number, perhaps by a target age. Right over here, you can see that this is basically a financial model for your own personal finances. There are a few assumptions that we're going to continue adding towards in the future, but right now, this is how it stands. As you can see, you can input your starting take-home salary. You can choose whether you want to include CPF or not. I've chosen not to do this. Let's say the average person, average guy rather, after 2 years of national service, starts their career at the age of 24, gets a take-home salary of $3,500. Now that is of course after CPF, because I know that the median fresh grad nowadays is getting like 4.3k and some even getting 7k. So there's that over here. You also assume a yearly increment of 4%, which is largely in line with what we're expecting this year for 2025. You get some promotions, maybe 3 of them, and then after that you just stagnate in year 8. That's very conservative as well. Now, if you get this model for yourself, you can play around with the formulas to change this such that you factor in fixed spending that you're unable to get rid of if you think that this rate is too high. Nonetheless, taking the average savings rate that we got from our previous video at 35%, that is going to result in the theoretical average Singaporean reaching that figure by the age of 40, which sounds pretty sweet actually, because that means that, the average Singaporean, if they do everything right and they just follow a plan and stick to it, assuming as well that they, don't have any luck with a BTO or marriage and all that kind of stuff, then they could theoretically go off and explore many popular overseas retirement opportunities that ASEAN offers. The other thing that you can of course control is the kinds of risks that you take when investing. So for example, if you chose to not put anything into your cash account, you might want to go into one of those investment instruments that pays like 5 to 6% dividend. Once again, high risk, but if you were to be able to do that, then yes, you will be able to further bring it forward by another year. So overall, what are the lessons from this? Well, as you can see, if one were to stick to a plan and execute over a long-term time horizon, rather than trying to get rich quick and taking on too much risk, the average Singaporean can actually realistically expect to do this by the age of 40. And if you're Singaporean and watching this, you might balk at the idea of going to neighboring countries as a retirement plan. And granted, this actually only works if you are a single individual and have little to no ties to this island that we call home. However, if you are of a different demographic, like for example, you might be a Malaysian working in Singapore, or you might even be from one of the ASEAN countries who are looking to return to their home countries after a certain stint, this figure might actually make sense to you. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let us know in the comments down below. All in all, I hope you found this video informative and interesting. If you did, do consider leaving a like and subscribing to this channel, because we'll be coming out with more of such content. With all that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.